Hi, my name is Gary Johnson, and I own the Great American Sign Company in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Vectric, the CNC 2D and 3D design software company, invited me to show you some of my recent work in this presentation I put together for their 2019 user group meeting in Denver, Colorado. With 3D software like Vectric's VCarve and Aspire and a little imagination, you too can create some amazing work. Now, just to give you a little bit of background, I started the Great American Sign Company in 1989 in a little garage with a $3,000 loan from my mom, which bought me a used computer and a few necessary tools. In 1994, I was able to move to a two-car garage in a basement where I carved my first sign in 1997. It wasn't with a CNC router. I couldn't afford one of those. I carved it by hand with a set of chisels and an instructional CD by an amazing sign artist by the name of Jay Cook. It wasn't until 2006 that I could afford to buy a small used CNC router. It was called the Dimension 200, and it was the smallest, least expensive model made by a company called Gerber, which was #1 in the sign industry at the time. As it so happened, the same person that taught me hand carving with this instructional CD also taught CNC routing on weekends in his sign shop in the mountains of Stowe, Vermont. Back then, the machines were pretty much limited to engraving, cutting out shapes, and V-carving. But with a little imagination, I was able to create some pretty nice signs. In 2010, I was introduced to the ball nose router bit and the amazing things it could do when paired with the right software. It allowed me to imitate any texture and carve any shape I could imagine. Thanks to this bit and amazing software like Vectric Aspire, I was able to create some award-winning signs and have a lot of fun in the process. There is one sign in particular that Vectric was most interested in having me talk about, and that is this mechanical sign I created for the Multicam booth at last year's International Sign Association convention in Orlando, Florida. This is certainly one of the most complex signs that I have ever taken on. Here is a little video I created that gives you a close-up on some of its features. When I committed myself to this project, I had just 5 months to get this done, which was not a lot of time considering I had no background in mechanics. My first step was to dive into the internet, downloading books, watching hours of videos on YouTube, and buying kits in toy stores. I thumbed through a few books on mechanics, but my real breakthrough came when I discovered a group of kinetic artists in the UK known for making mechanical toys they call automata. There I could see firsthand how they cleverly incorporated movement into their sculptures. Two of the artists, Matt Smith and Philip Loundis, I actually became friendly with and bought a few of their pieces. Owning a few actual models made all the difference because unlike a YouTube video or even a museum piece, I could examine the mechanics from every angle and really get a grasp on how A affected B and C. Once I had a handle on very basic mechanics, I worked up a drawing. With just 3 months to go, I decided on 3 animations: the head, the wings, and the sign letters. I decided to use a hand crank because it is more fun and interactive when you're the one making the motion. The wings are operated with a simple lever, the letters with 4 rotating cams, and the head turns with a crank and a Geneva mechanism. With the help of Vectric's Gear Maker gadget, or any number of online gear generators, you too can fashion gears that mesh together perfectly and operate at the speed you desire. All of these programs will produce vector art for the gears that you can upload into Vectric to cut perfect working gears. Most of these programs will even generate an on-screen animation so you can see in real time how your gears will affect the speed of your operation. Next step was to render my logo and the building it stood atop in 3D. Now my logo was complicated, but the building not so much. Because if you break it down, you only have to draw 1 window, 1 cornerstone, 1 cornice bracket, 1 brick, and just repeat, copy, and paste. Next, it was time to break away from the computer monitor and get my hands dirty. I had 1 crazy month of carving, gluing, shaping, fitting, testing, and welding. Now, one important thing I learned the hard way: don't glue anything you don't absolutely have to. Ideally, you want to create the parts so that they fit snugly together, so you can take it apart and make adjustments until it works perfectly. If need be, you can attach loose parts with a removable nail or screw. Once everything was properly assembled and working as it should, we began painting. I started with a smaller version of the building, which I used to test out different color combinations and faux finishes. By accident, I stumbled upon a great technique for an aged finish, in which I created by painting black in and around the recesses of the many architectural details, and then immediately washing it off, giving the building that authentic, dirty New York City look. Another reason my building looked so authentic were the subtle textures I applied to the model. One of my favorite features about Vectric is the absolute ease at which you can add texture. Not only does texture make your projects look unique, but they make the job of painting so much easier. Perfect, smooth, glossy surfaces are difficult to achieve and make your projects look like they were stamped out in a factory. As you can see from these pictures, textures add life and vibrancy to your project. Another way I was able to add texture and realism to my project was with aged metal finishes. Aged metal finishes also make the job of painting so much easier. After all, it already looks old, so it takes the pressure off having to make it look perfect. Here are some examples of signs which I have used iron paint, bronze paint, and even copper leaf to create unique aged finishes. None of the projects you've seen in this presentation were painted with expensive industrial finishes. There's no need to use expensive paints. I use Krylon and Rust-Oleum when I want a smooth, glossy finish, Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore house paints for anything with texture, and Modern Master and Ronin Aqualeaf for metallic finishes. I never buy expensive brushes either. I mostly buy the cheapest brushes I can find from Michaels, Hobby Lobby, AC Moore. As mentioned before, on occasion I use specialized paints from Sculpt Nouveau and Modern Masters. These companies have an amazing variety of color, but what I especially like are their real metal finishes. They have paint with real silver, bronze, and even iron that you can age with special acids and finish off with high-quality clear coats and waxes to create stunning aged metal finishes. In conclusion, I would just like to point out that you should not be intimidated by anything you've seen. If I can do this stuff, so can you. It just takes some time, determination, and practice. I know that some of these projects I showed you look really complicated, But if you break down the task into basic steps, then it's really not so overwhelming. Now, I implore you to take advantage of Vectric's texture capabilities. Texture takes a lot of the stress out of painting and makes your projects look so much more richer and unique. Now, no one is good at everything, so don't be shy to ask for help or to buy the services of a professional to get you over the hump in your project. Now, bottom line, just have fun with it. After all, that's why you bought your CNC in the first place. Don't stress out over the little problems. Just keep working the problem until you get a solution. This is my contact information if anyone needs some help or advice. Thank you so much for watching my presentation.